Yesterday we watched The Silence of the Lambs. Bringing things down today, we're watching, ironically, Hannibal Rising. Should be called Hannibal Downing. This is a Blockbuster exclusive, unrated. Boom, boom, boom. This is a prequel to Silence of the Lambs. It stars as young Hanniballecter, the excellent actor Gaspard Ulliel. And I had low expectations for this, and that's generally a good way to enter a movie theatre, I think. Or pop in a Blockbuster DVD. Exclusively, the movie opens with a spider web. Well, before that, it opens with a different kind of spider web. The Weinstein Company. But we're in a foggy forest, not unlike the opening to The Silence of the Lambs. So, we're in good footing so far. We see a boar rummaging. That's a bad sign, isn't it? You don't want to be bored by a boar. They should have used a lamb. Nah, people would have hated that, right? And this whole sequence, you can hear like an enchanting fairy tale music playing. We don't know when we are. We see two children playing down by the lake. It's young Hannibal and his little sister, Misha. And then an explosion from an air raid. It is then revealed that we're in 1944 at Lecter Castle in Lithuania. The family escaped the Nazis by going to a cottage deep in the woods. But there, the Russians and German fighting continues, and the family is indirectly killed, leaving Hannibal alone with his sister to raise or rise. It starts snowing, pretty much a blizzard, and then this ragtag militia group sympathetic with the Nazis show up. Food is scarce. The leader eats a bird. There's feathers all over his face. This is when you know they're in dire straits. When the bad guy is forced to eat a frozen pheasant, you should get worried. And then they grab Misha, the little sister of Hannibal. Somehow Hannibal escapes. He's walking through the snow. He's rescued as a little kid. And then, 8 years later, the war is over. We're in Soviet-occupied Lithuania now. And at Lecter Castle, they've turned it into an orphanage where Hannibal is a resident. He sets traps for a bully, which is very Lecter-like. He escapes across the Soviet border from the orphanage by outrunning guard dogs and fooling guards by setting up this scarecrow decoy on the fence. See, he's intelligent, like the future Lecter. Then there's a travel scene where he's on a steam engine and we see a map of him heading west from Russia into like Germany. Very Indiana Jones-like, and I'm all on board. This is wonderful. Where is he going to go? He has a letter which has an address on it for his uncle and auntie who live in France. He shows up there. His uncle's dead, but his uncle's wife, a Japanese lady played by Gong Li, welcomes him in. So all through his teenage years, Hannibal hasn't talked. He's a mute, except for at night in the orphanage, where he would have screamed. His night terrors continue at his auntie's mansion, and she wakes him up, helps him deal with it through the ancient art of samuraiing. I like this actress Gong Li. She's playing his auntie, Lady Murasaki. If it was just the two of them, I think this would be a great film. and I'm still all on board. I'm very interested in seeing where this is going. Nothing like Silence of the Lambs, which is good because you don't want a carbon copy. Although Silence of the Lambs builds nicely, every scene leads straight into the next scene perfectly, like a staircase. It ascends, it rises. I don't know if Hannibal Rising is rising. Like a souffle, maybe they're not heating it properly. Although I'm not a chef. But Hanniballecter is. I like Gaspard Ulliel too, as young Hannibal. He's a great actor. I think he was also a model before he was discovered as an actor. Although he does look a lot like George McFly in this, rather than Sir Anthony Hopkins. I wonder if they could have just got Sir Anthony Hopkins for this movie. These could have been flashback scenes where he's talking to like a young FBI agent about his origin story, and therefore we all just picture Anthony Hopkins in it. Well, now with like deep fakes and AI, they could have made it look more like Anthony Hopkins. But this is a good second choice. Or you know what? Yeah, like what Psycho 4, The Beginning did, where Norman calls a late night radio talk show and talks about his origin story. Then you can bookend the movie better. What I'm saying is Anthony Hopkins' involvement in this would have made this film much better. It would have connected it more to the other films. At least with Psycho 4, The Beginning, you've still got the creepy house, you got the motel. Here they're in a different country, not in America at all. And I get that future Hanniballecter is very charming and cunning and a genius, and maybe he hasn't learnt those traits yet. Although there's a detective that gives him a lie detector test in the 1950s, I guess they existed, and he had no emotion, and the detective calls him monstrous because he has no emotion on the radar test. Who does? They can be thrown out in a court of law, right? But alas, inspired by his auntie's culture of samurai warriors, he dresses up like a samurai in this mask that resembles the Ozempic mask we talked about yesterday that stops him from eating. That was a preventative measure. That was a preventative measure that they put on him in Silence of the Lambs to restrain him. Here he wears it as a form of empowerment, like it's the Batman mask or something. Okay, this is a superhero origin story movie. Again, if Anthony Hopkins had been relating this origin story to a young, naive FBI agent in the future, then we wouldn't have to believe everything that we're seeing. We could say, well, he's making all this up, or the truth is somewhat less exciting than this. But here we are. He's wearing a samurai mask, apparently, killing people who have wronged him or his auntie. So he goes to medical school because his name's Dr. Lecter in the future. He's an artist because he drew in his cell. So we have to show that he's a great artist back here as well. And then apparently samurai warriors would decapitate their victims. And then Lecter draws them decapitated, and then he does the same thing, which is kind of shoehorning us to think about Benjamin Raspail in Silence of the Lambs, the head in the jar. So they're putting in these little moments. Are they enough? Later, Lecter remembers the whole flashback to his sister getting eaten by the Nazis, and then he goes and finds them somehow, one by one, and executes them for the murder of his sister. So it becomes a revenge plot, which is pretty by and by, more elaborate ways. No one dies in the same way. Like Wile E. Coyote plans, he never uses the same trick twice. His auntie gets kidnapped by the lead Nazi. He goes and rescues her, and then there's one guy left in Canada. He flies to Melville, Canada, And then just before he kills him, it is revealed that he is killing these people not for revenge, but because he also ate his sister, and he doesn't want anyone else to know that, so he's silencing them. But everyone knows Hannibal the cannibal. What does it matter? I guess maybe he doesn't want the world to know that he ate his own sister. I think he'll be forgiven. The Donner Party was forgiven, right? Not much of a party. Then the black car drives away, hopefully to Baltimore, where he can open up his psychiatric practice / restaurant. And then that will neatly tie us into a bow for the future movies. Ending on a sad note now, the actor that played young Hannibal, Gaspard Ulliel, died tragically a couple of years ago in a skiing accident. I like his performance here. It was an impossible task to follow Anthony Hopkins as Hannibal Lecter. I think he does a really good job. A lot of people do nothing with their lives. He was in this movie. He was a world-famous model. He had a family. So, rest in peace. I don't know how you follow Anthony Hopkins as Hannibal Lecter. It's like when Steven Weber tried to follow Nicholson in the Shining remake. It's a losing battle. But I'm glad this movie exists. Kind of bookends the whole thing. Although if they had just called it Shredder, the origin story, and no references to Silence of the Lambs, would we like it? Would it work just as well? Yeah, I think so. In fact, it'll probably make even more sense, because you expect the Shredder to come from Japan. Have you seen Hannibal Rising? What did you think? Did you like it too? I did fall asleep a couple of times, but I think because it was shot beautifully and the music was so relaxing and indicative of the time period. I think they took a lot of chances with this, and it fell a little short, but it's the best movie from 2007 that I can hold in my hand right now. Hooroo. Many mocha cookie crumble frappuccino, by the way. Sponsorship deals available, Starbucks.